it is time to welcome our next guest. And I'm delighted to welcome Rachel Maclean. Now, Rachel is Conservative MP for Redditch and has served since the 8th of June 2017. She also holds the government post of Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Transport Decarbonisation and the Future of Transport. So it is a huge role, particularly in the context of climate change and, of course, COP26, as I mentioned earlier, coming up. Minister, I'm very pleased that we could welcome you today, that you have time to join us. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. And good morning. And it's a real pleasure to be here. As you said yourself, I'm also an EV driver. And so I never like to miss an opportunity to champion this technology, particularly on a day like today. So thanks again for the invite. So as Richard's already mentioned, we published our I think I'm not going to hesitate to say, a world-leading transport decarbonisation plan, which is incredibly ambitious, but also achievable. Because with transport, it is our biggest source of carbon emission. So it is vital that we find ways to travel more cleanly. And the plan sets out that route to a sustainable future. And it isn't just about reducing global temperatures, vital though that is. It's also about creating communities free from pollution and congestion and placing the UK at the forefront of green technology, creating new skilled jobs, levelling up our whole country and recovering from the pandemic. EVs aren't the silver bullet, but they do pack a huge punch. Because if we removed 100% of emissions from our roads, we'd remove 90% of the source of transport emissions, which actually is an incredible statistic and an incredible opportunity as well. And that's why we as a government have pledged to phase out the sale of new polluting cars and vans by 2035. And we're putting our money where our mouth is. We are committing £2.8 billion altogether in a package to support industry and consumers make that transition to zero emission vehicles. That includes a plug-in car grant of up to £2,500, which has so far helped fund the purchase of 200,000 zero emission vehicles. And industry are coming forward with new models all the time. We can see over 100 models on the market now. And what we're seeing is that the variety at different price points is increasing exponentially. The number of EVs priced under £35,000 has increased by 50%. And let me be clear, I want to see those vehicles being built right here in the UK. We're already the second largest market for ultra low emission vehicles. And we have, of course, a world leading and renowned manufacturing sector. I'm a West Midlands MP. I feel this in my bones. It's something that I've always championed. And that's why it's right that we have put £1 billion into the Automotive Transformation Fund to build a world-leading electric supply chain right here in the UK. Cost and supply are vital, but of course, the most important way is to build driver confidence by improving the driver experience. And Richard's already referred, and the questioners have already referred rightly to those, as have you, Rachel. So we have to confront those barriers that are holding EVs back. The first one is range anxiety. It's what we always hear. And that's why we're investing £1.3 billion to build that infrastructure, that world-class charging infrastructure that drivers deserve. And voters, as you said, we have already installed 25,000 public charge points and more rapid chargers per 100 mile of our road network than any other country in Europe. And in 2 years' time, every motorway service station in the country will have 6 rapid powered chargers. So we will see more home, more workplace, more on-street charging, obviously all meeting different use cases. I fully agree with Richard on that point. We are making money available to local councils, £20 million, for them to install those charging points where people don't have their own drives. So installing them on lampposts or in other suitable local areas. And we're still providing those grants for individuals of up to £350 so that you can install that domestic charger in your own home, charging up while you sleep. And so one of the themes of today's discussion is the role of policymakers. And I would be the first to agree that we in government don't have the answers, which is why we continually consult with experts and with industry. And that's what we've done when we're looking at the EV driving experience. And I know this is, again, probably the other biggest pain point. So all those questions around how do we locate charge points, how do we pay quickly and simply, so we're not downloading multiple apps and having to sign up to different accounts. How can we reassure drivers a network is reliable? When you get to your charge point, it's going to work, it won't be broken. We know that these are issues we're going to tackle. I'm sure I'm going to get questioned on it, but we are publishing our response to that consultation very soon, and we will be committing to lay legislation to fix some of these problems, most of these problems, before the end of the year. We are going to be saying a lot more about the infrastructure strategy across the whole piece that needs to underpin our transition to electric vehicles. We'll be publishing the first EV infrastructure strategy this year, and that will set out exactly how we're going to build a world-class infrastructure system. We're ready for those 9 million electric cars and vans that we hope to be on Britain's roads by 2030. We know that everybody, all the actors, have got a role to play, including businesses, including energy providers and government. We all have to come together, as we are already doing, to map out where the infrastructure is still lacking and to enable us to fill those gaps. So let me leave you with this as my final thought. We will continue to set the right conditions and provide that generous financial support, but we will need the help of businesses to continue to make Britain EV ready. This is the defining decade in our battle for climate change, so there's no time to lose. So I look forward to our discussion later on in the session.
Well, before you go anywhere, and thank you very much, Rachel Maclean, we have some questions that have come through from participants watching and listening to everything today. So let's try and fly through a few of those if we can. I'm curious to know how much of a live issue this is for your constituents in the West Midlands. But a question here more specifically, what do you see as being the single greatest challenge in the transition to electric vehicles? Is it consumer sentiment? Is it grid capacity? Battery range, charger installation, or something else? In a way, you've covered all those points.
Yes, it is a live issue for my constituents. That's the first point. And to sort of pick out on your second question, I can confidently say that grid capacity is not a challenge. And you will hear that if you speak to the National Grid. They are very well prepared through a number of measures and working across the whole piece and the whole power system. We know that we'll have the grid capacity there through a combination of the work that government's doing with renewable incentives and a number of other things. So we are not concerned about that at all. It's important that we keep on saying that, because often people do think that the grid's going to blow up if everybody plugs in. But I think, as Richard's already said, people are not all going to plug in at the same time. And of course, the whole system is going to be made smart and intelligent. And in fact, we're going to see prices of electricity come down as we make this transition. But I think I've already alluded to the main ones. They are the range anxiety, which actually we find that's often more of a perceived barrier than a real one. And I know that you'll probably find this yourself, Rachel, when you've actually made that transition. You probably find that, yes, you do have to make 1 or 2 long journeys, maybe once a month or so on, to do whatever you're doing. But most of the journeys will be short journeys. They're routine. You'll charge at home. You set out fully charged, and you know what you're doing. And that we can see that in the stats, because we know that when EV drivers switch, I think something like 98% of drivers who switch to an electric vehicle say they won't go back. So I think that's definitive proof. I think there are real issues still around that interoperability of the charging network. We do have lots of different providers. It is a real pain, but we are definitely, since I've been the minister, which I'm pleased I've been the minister now for nearly 2 years, and I've been able to really drive this work through. It sounds quite boring and techie, sort of consumer experience consultation, but it is really important, because it's about when you actually go to the charge point, is it going to work? What happens if it's broken? Can you actually get hold of someone to fix it? Will you be able to pay with a contactless just as easily as you pay for your petrol? And we do need to fix those real practical issues, and we are doing.
The way you and Richard describe it, it makes it sound like a brave new world where everything's going to be cheaper and run efficiently. But the cynical journalist in me says someone's going to make money from this somewhere along the way, and the consumers will end up paying for it. But look, let's see what happens. It's fair to say other countries do much better than the UK in terms of pushing forward electric cars. And Norway is one question here, which has done much better, according to the person who sent this in, on encouraging EV car purchase through incentives and penalties for ICE vehicles. What can you learn from Norway's approach to become the top European for EV take-up?
Well, I strongly disagree with the premise of your question, to be fair.
Not my question, that was sent in to us. Just
fair enough. Either yourself or the questioner, I strongly disagree with that. The facts do not bear that out. We are a world leader in this transition. We are the only country to have set out such an ambitious phase out date for petrol and diesel cars. Don't forget, Norway does not have an automotive manufacturing industry, a homegrown industry. That makes a massive difference. We have to consider all those millions of people who are working in that industry. And also we have to work with industry, because we are relying on them to come up with the new models, the cheaper and better models that all of our residents and people living in this country can buy. So of course I always look at what other countries are doing. I actually reject very strongly that proposition. I'm very proud that we actually have one of the best charging networks in Europe. We have an extremely generous package of incentives to enable people to buy cars, and that is why we've seen, I think so far this year, 1 in 7 cars that have been bought have a plug. So we are absolutely doing a lot of things right. We can do more, I would agree with that, but I am going to be very, very robust in that answer.
No problem. Well, look, thank you very much. And as I mentioned earlier, we're grateful that you're able to stick around, hear our other speakers, and join us at least in part for some of the group discussion in a few minutes' time. So thank you very much, Rachel Maclean, Minister and Parliamentary, let me get the title exactly right, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State, Transport, Decarbonisation and Future of Transport.